I found myself on stages and really in the moment, and then somebody would ask me, "Can you repeat that?" And then I realized I'm like, "No, actually, I can't repeat that. I don't really know what I was saying." Later, I found out that I was, channeling. That's when I enter a channel state when I'm like just in the zone like that. So all these things started to kind of pop up and get me curious, and at the same time, I'm starting to feel like I don't have the whole story. This I'm approaching life in my job, my role from a very masculine driven, and the funny thing is that what's really being asked of me is innovation, creativity, right? Which live in the feminine side.
Welcome to the Daily Soul Bytes Show. I am your host, Bolaabimbola, spiritual alchemist, life coach, and energy practitioner. Daily Soul Bytes is where we have guests from all over the world who are authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs in the fields of spirituality, psychology, and leadership, sharing their insights for the expansion of collective consciousness. And today I have a very special guest, Gary Montalvo, all the way from Florida. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thank you for having me, Bola. I mean, so people, I'm a podcast host myself, so I know what a big deal it is to bring somebody into your world and all the work that it takes to prepare for the guests and trust them. And so thank you. It means a lot to me, and I promise to take care of your people as much as I know how to.
Oh, that is lovely. Yes, it's good to have that resonance, not just from a values point of view, but also from a professional point of view. So I'm
100%.
looking forward to our conversation. Thank
Me
you,
too.
Gary. So I read a bit about your bio before we start.
Okay.
Gary Montalvo is a leadership and mindset coach, a speaker, and a podcast host who helps big hearted entrepreneurs get out of their own way. That is so powerful because getting out of our own way is not as easy as it sounds. A lot of the times we are not sure who we are and different parts of us. And actually having Gary here to talk about how to understand self and how to understand getting that self out of the way as well as loving that self is actually quite a big passion for me today. So thank you, Gary. So how did you get to this place where you not only came to understand yourself, but to really resonate with leadership and the
Yeah.
mindset and really coming to weave spirituality into it? How did this
Yeah.
start for you?
Yeah. A lot of failure, a lot of trial and error,
Yeah,
as most of
I
these
hear
things
you.
happen. So, my first career actually was in marketing. I was an art director. And I'm the child of immigrant parents. My parents migrated from Dominican Republic to the United States. And, I was the gay kid who was bullied and I didn't fit in because obviously I was hiding the secret and I was, and so one of the things that happens when you are an immigrant and when you are an other and when you are hiding part of who you are is that you end up shrinking. You end up figuring out ways to blend in, to dial down your authenticity so that you can survive fitting in, right? And whatever you think that looks like. And
True.
so that worked well for me. I assimilated. I graduated from the School of Visual Arts. I had a very successful career as an art director. But these mechanisms that I had learned of surviving and shrinking myself and dialing in started to show up in my professional life. So, and in my personal life too, like, avoiding uncomfortable conversations, leaving relationships within like 3 or 4 months because that's when things would get uncomfortable. But professionally, I started to notice, I was 22, 23, and I was managing these big photo shoots, and I had to get the artists, the entourage. I was at Sony Music, so it was like music, CD packages. I'm dating myself back a little bit. So, I had to get hair, makeup, stylist, the label, the artist, the manager, everybody to kind of come together and
Mm,
create a vision. And then I realized that I felt really unprepared for that, and I knew how to make something look good, but I didn't know how to navigate all the politics and all the interpersonal dynamics that came with all that. And so I did that for a few years. I was successful enough, but the experience that I had was always of like not doing a good job, not feeling good enough, not feeling like I belonged. And so I left and I went to a different smaller company and I said, "Okay, smaller, more manageable. This is better." Right?
mm,
Same thing started to show up. Not feeling good enough, not feeling confident, not feeling like I could own my power. Did that for a while, left again. I said, okay, I'm going to go on my own. I'm going to go start working for myself. That's going to be the answer. Same thing, not feeling good enough, not feeling confident enough. So I had to start to deal with like, okay, I'm taking myself wherever I go, right? Like whatever relationship I go to, whatever job I go to, I'm doing the same stuff. I'm playing out the same patterns. And so I started to get really interested in personal development and personal coaching and I went down this, I was lucky enough to found a program that was very transformative and I went through this journey that like lit me up and woke me up. And after you finish that program, you can go be a mentor to the next class. And so I did that. And that was when everything changed because I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I could have a conversation with somebody, and as a result of that conversation, their life could change. I'm like, okay, sign me up. Like I want to do this all the time. And so I started working part-time for the company. They offered me a job and I was just hanging out again, totally for fun because I love doing it. I love being in service. I love working with people. It was like an amazing experience. But it was one of these places where I got to really practice. There was 100 new clients through the doors every month. We had trainings happening all the time. So within a year or two, I had a breadth of experience. I was like, running some of their leadership programs. And then that's when I decided, okay, this is now more than just fun. This is my purpose in life. This is what I'm meant to be doing. And so, I got certified at that point, but at that point I could have taught the class because I had so much experience and I began the journey of starting my business and getting out into the world and sharing my medicine with people. And um, I love working with entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs for me are they're amplifiers. When you share your medicine with an entrepreneur, it doesn't stay there. It like they spread it to their families, to their clients, to their communities, to their employees, to their teams. So I love working with entrepreneurs, and then heart-centered people are just my jam. Like people that care, people that have big hearts that want to make an impact in the world. They want to. So for me, working with those guys is just like the biggest way for me to multiply my impact. And I've been really fortunate to have a career for almost 20 years doing that. So that's a
mm.
long-winded answer of how I got here.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Gary. I love the way you have come into this earth plane to actually explore some really interesting themes.
Yeah,
Because, leaving your country where you are a majority to become a minority in a place.
yeah,
I also have that experience. So I know what
yeah,
that feels like.
yeah,
And then also to actually be exploring, your identities, your sexual identity in a way that makes you have to, hide for a little bit because of the limiting conditioning that is
yeah.
around us. And those are really extremely powerful themes that you have come to explore. And I love the way you transformed all of that. And this is a gift that you're now giving to all of us. So thank you for sharing that. I'd
Thank
love to
you.
know how you came to that place where that spirituality,
Yeah,
because there are lots of people who explore leadership. I don't think in this reality that we're in that there is any right or wrong in terms of what we choose to explore.
yeah,
I think it's all about being, owning what it is, accepting it and exploring it, even if it's shadow, even if it's light, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I know leadership can be explored in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I would love to know more about how you explore, how for you spirituality and leadership go together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love this conversation. This is Gary 2.0. The I created a successful coaching practice. I then closed that practice and went to work for one of my corporate consulting clients who offered me a job running their in-house training department. So I was managing the leadership development for 27,000 people, 27,000 sales reps at the time. So incredible opportunity. Um, Within a year, I got promoted and promoted and promoted, and I became the country manager of the U.S., then country manager Canada, then sales globally. So it made me really successful. And what I started to notice was that something was incomplete. Like I was stuck in this pattern of doing. I was stuck in this pattern of trying to um, force outcomes. And, when you're a leadership coach, you're like, do whatever it takes. Don't give up. Make it happen. These are the types of things that you hear. So I started to realize, I'm like, that there was a way that I was approaching life that was I didn't know it at the time, but now I've come to identify it as very like masculine, right? Very masculine energy. And so I started to inquire. Now, I also started to notice little things. So I would be around energy workers and, I could be over here having a conversation with you, and all of a sudden I'm like, what is that? What was going on? And I would turn around and somebody was doing energy work back there. I started having experiences where I would walk into a room and all of a sudden I would just get really nauseous and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Why am I? And I go to the bathroom and I get myself together, and then I come back and I realize somebody in the room was like, working some stuff out, emoting, and I was picking up on it. I've always been intuitive. I've always had, you know, um, and yeah, intuition. I've always just known things since I was a kid. I would just have like, I would pick up things like that. I would know things, but I just thought, oh, I'm a Pisces, and then when I had coaching training, I would say, oh, I'm a, it's my coaching training now that lets me read body language and I pick up. But there were times that there was just reasons that I knew something and I don't know why I knew it, and I started paying attention to that, right? I found myself on stages and really in the moment, and then somebody would ask me, "Can you repeat that?" And then I realized I'm like, "No, actually I can't repeat that. I don't really know what I was saying." Later, I found out that I was, channeling. That's when I enter a channel state when I'm like just in the zone like that. So all these things started to kind of pop up and get me curious, and at the same time, I'm starting to feel like I don't have the whole story. I'm approaching life in my job, my role from a very masculine driven, and the funny thing is that what's really being asked of me is innovation, creativity, right? Which live in the feminine side,
Mhm.
right? So I started to inquire and I started to get curious, and I found a dear sister of mine who started the journey with me, but took a whole other direction. And she's now a spiritual coach. And so I started working with her. I started going to some of her retreats. And then my whole world opened up. And then I started to realize that this is only part of the conversation, that the leadership have given me access to really accessing the masculine, but the feminine is really honoring the creativity, the intuition, and together when you bring those two things, it's like magic starts to happen. And so what I've also discovered is that The act of finding yourself, the act of healing yourself, the act of healing your ancestral lineage, that is radical leadership. Those are leadership moments, right? When you're pushing through, listen, some of the work that going into your shadow and digging up the stuff, like, it's hard work, right? It could take everything to do that. That's leadership. Forgiving, compassion for yourself just as much as others, right? Like, we're so hard on ourselves. Those are all acts of leadership. Authenticity, being the courage to be yourself, the courage to take up space, especially as people of color, especially as immigrants, that rewiring of allowing yourself to go, no, I belong in this room just as much as anybody else. That is radical leadership. And so what I started to discover is that leadership and the work of spirituality and leadership are really intertwined. It's really one side of the other coin,
Mm,
the of the same coin.
mm,
And so now I've been in this journey where my work as a leadership coach is changing, because I'm speaking a different language. I'm bringing in different modalities and different insights. I'm allowing myself to use my intuition in a way that I haven't before. There are times that I mean, I've only started doing this really recently, but I'll be on a coaching call with somebody, and then I'm starting, okay, let me get my deck of cards here, and let's pull some cards to figure out what's going on with you, which I would have never done. But I'm almost like coming out of the closet again, because I'm like, I've got these little secret stuff that I'm like, in the background, but I'm slowly allowing myself for it to be integrated into all of myself fully, right? Which is another journey of leadership that I'm on right now.
mm,
Allowing myself to own all those gifts and to trust them. And the trusting part has been even more challenging, Bola, because you know, our people's skills and gifts show up in many different ways. I have some people see things, they see colors, they see energy, they see entities, spirits. Some people hear them, right? Some people are very talented energy workers. Like, there's a bunch of gifts that people have. My gifts has always come as an intuition, like a knowing. All of a sudden, I know something and I don't know where it came from. And so sometimes it's hard to trust it because you're like, did I just make that up? Like, where did that come from? I don't know why this is the right thing to do. I don't know why this is the right strategy to do right now, but this is what my instincts are telling me. And then you have to learn to trust that. And that is an act of like radical leadership, like learning to trust that, because we're all being spoken to. You know this. We all have spirit in our ear, our ancestors, our guides, our spirit teams. That they are whispering, putting signs. You are being assisted at all moments. Right now, we get in our heads and we go, oh no, oh that's coincidence, and we're like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that, and we're the ones that are not listening, right? We're the ones, but they're trying to do their job to make sure that we're okay. But what I've really the journey that I've been on is really one of deep trust, of really developing a trust in something that I can't put my finger on, that I can't hold and go, that I don't have a degree or a certificate on my wall that says, oh, you've earned the right to talk about this, right? And in many ways it's a reclaiming of our lineage and our ancestry, and these gifts have really been passed through our ancestry and our lineage, but colonialism and industrialization made it so that we're not connected to them anymore. So there's just like a deep remembrance that also requires leadership because it's a reclaiming. Like, this is my birthright,
mm.
right? Anyway, I just went on for a really long time.
No, 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 totally. I love the reflections, the personal reflections that you've weaved into that. How do your clients, when they come to work with you, what
Yeah.
can they expect? How do you weave your understanding, that clear cognizance? I'm also clear cognizant. So I also get a knowing when I work with my clients as a quantum Reiki energy
Yeah.
practitioner. So how do you get them to really come to understand the different parts of them, understand their emotions? Because leadership has a lot of emotional intelligence in it.
Yeah.
And, we talked about how there are certain leadership styles that do not touch on spirituality, do not touch on that spirit self. And that's valid because there is a lot of work that we need to do, even though we also need to spend time in our being. So I would love to know
Yeah.
when your clients come to work with you, how you support them to really understand that self and then how
Yeah.
to get out of the way, how to allow that self to get out of the way from a place of
Yeah.
love or not.
The first step is me doing my work of creating conditions, creating structure, and creating practices that allow me to step into my trust. I think that the first job of any coach, of any mentor, is to be in the work. And, you know, I'm sure you've seen this quite often as well, where you see people out there that are not in the work and they're portraying what they're portraying. And, you know, so my first responsibility always is to be in integrity with myself and always doing my own work. That doesn't mean I have all my stuff together by any means. That doesn't mean I have anything figured out. I'm being really vulnerable that I'm in a journey and I'm figuring this out myself, right? So we but that's part of it, right? That I'm in the inquiry, and I also bring that to the conversations. I bring my vulnerability. I bring my, hey, I'm evolving, I'm changing, I'm figuring this out. I I think that as mentors and coaches, that's also the biggest way we can be of service
Mm.
and a gift to people. So I don't get on a pedestal at any point. I'm like, I'm right there with you. We're walking each other home. You're my teacher. I'm your teacher. We're just, and then when we get into work, for me, it's different because people come to me to work on their business. So it's like we're working in goals, we're working on tangible plans. So once you make a plan, once you tell me, hey, Gary, I want to reach there, I want to increase my income, I want to launch a new product, I want to, diversify. I want to learn how to get on speech on stages. I want to learn how to sales. Like, those are some of the things that people come to me for. Well, great. We sit down, we come up with a plan, we come up with a strategy, we figure it out. But then you have to do the work. And when you do the work, stuff comes up, right? You get scared, you avoid, you have breakthroughs, you have failures. And that's the medicine. That is the opportunity. We go, okay, let's look at this. What happened? What did you learn? What got in the way? What could you do differently next time? And then as that stuff comes up, we give, I give you practices. So maybe we start off with journaling. Maybe we start off with, something that I've been doing, Bola, that's like pretty basic, but it's not really. All of my clients now, the first thing that I do is I implement morning rituals. I implement some kind of mindfulness practice because we just live connected to these things. We always have a device in front of us. We always have something fighting for our attention. Our nervous systems are fried. Like, we were not designed to live this way. We were not designed to live with 24-hour lights and noise around us. Like, just again, 100, 150 years we were living in darkness and or at least had enough, there was like one light bulb in the house, like it wasn't this. So My point is that our evolution has not caught up to all this stimulation. So we have to include that in the work that we're doing on ourselves. And so that's why I think you're seeing such a rise in the spiritual conversation, because spirituality demands that you get present. It demands that you reflect. It demands that you ask deep questions and allow the answers to show up. So there's a way that spirituality is really well suited for undoing some of the, I don't want to say damage, but conditioning that we are living into right now. And so I think, one of the first things that I'm doing with people is just putting those practices in to give people awareness. And I'm like, girl, you got to slow down. You got to take care of yourself. When was the last time you had a day off? When was the last time because entrepreneurs, they want to go, 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 go. Next, I got to catch the next sale. I got to launch the next product. I got to. And it's like, yes. And the spiritual practice is what allows you to be fully integrated, not in reaction, allowing allowing for the wins and the failures. The failures are medicine too, So like that's one of the things that I really try to teach my clients is like they come in so hard trying to avoid failure, and my thing is like, no, no, fail fast, learn the lesson, integrate it. Like the key is not the failure, the key is in the integration, and
Mhm.
that's something that spirituality teaches as well, right? How do I integrate this lesson into my being, into my body? How do I sit with it and reflect and extrapolate all of the lessons that are in it for me? And
Mm.
then from there, well, now I have that in me. So next opportunity I go, I'm gonna have those lessons with me. When you don't integrate that and you avoid the pain of that launch not working out, or that program you were trying to launch, or that product failing, when you just go, and you move on, you're carrying all that with you. It doesn't get complete from an energetic perspective, and I think that is the work, that is how I bring in. In the past I would have just been like, okay, no problem, let's get back to work, let's handle this thing. Now it's like, no, let's weave this integration in, let's weave this medicine into our work. um, and again, right now is something that I'm doing organically. Everyone is sort of different in how that evolves. I'm sure as I move more into my practices, it'll become more, or maybe not. I was gonna say it might become more of like process or system. But I just caught myself and said, that's probably a very masculine old paradigm thing to say. Probably not. It might just be always an intuitive outflow.
Mm.
So yeah, so it's right now it's very organic, it's very organic, but it's all centered around accomplishing goals around their business.
Mm, mm. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gary. And then it's always very interesting when we look at the different parts of us and how those parts of us that are really go, 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 find it really difficult to slow down. It's almost like there is a negative conditioning about that, about slowing down. So I love the way in your work you
Yeah,
actually encourage the need to pause, because that pause is really where we are allowing ourselves to be supported, to connect to that unconditionally loving part of us, that higher
yeah,
self. And it's really important for each and every person who has decided to not just come into this earth plane to survive, but to expand. Because when we integrate those parts, I love what you talked about in terms of integration. We actually expand. We actually loosen, we rewire the density of those parts,
yeah,
and we find ourselves expanding, and we can actually fly even faster. And
yes,
some people will say, oh, when I expand or when I pause, will I not become passive or will I not become weak? It's actually in that pause that we gain that infinite energy. We gain that infinite part of part of our own selves. The part that needs to get out of the way is the physical ego part of
Yes.
self. In
Oh my
order
God.
for the higher self to be the one driving the car, I always say it's almost like the physical ego self has to get in the back seat and the higher self has to be the one driving the car. And it's a very, it can be said in that way, but it's very, very challenging because of
Yeah.
that word you said, trust. It's something we're not used to, which is why I love the fact that I've written that my book, Daily Soul Bites, which really is available now anywhere books are sold. And it's talking about the different perspectives that we hold, that physical ego self perspectives, which are usually around fear,
Yeah.
around, anxiety. It's not a negative thing. It's just that is the energy they carry. And there's also that higher self, which is carried perspectives of the empowered being that we
Yeah.
also are. So their perspectives, those two perspectives are within us. Just as I'm feeling anxious about our launch did not go well, there's also a part of me that knew that I gave it a shot. That is also proud that I did put in that effort. And it's about coming to know that just as I have this perspective, I also have this perspective that
Yeah.
is positive. And where do we want to align to? Which one do we want to expand? And it takes practice. I love that you mentioned journaling, you mentioned mindfulness, you mentioned the pause. These things take practice and it's
Yeah.
a journey. I don't think we ever get to a place where we have no more expansion to do or no more integration to
No.
do. There's always that, there's always
No.
the up and down, but we develop a resilience, I believe, a stronger resilience to push through those low times, to
Yeah.
integrate faster, to align faster, to hold joy and peace and ease for longer, whatever timeline we're finding ourselves in. So I'd love to ask you, Gary, what are some of the challenges to really develop this trust? Because those, not having that trust is because of certain beliefs that we hold. What are the kind of patterns that you have come to really experience or to observe in the work that you're doing with your clients that stops them from allowing the self to get out of the way of the higher self?
Yeah. I got excited when you were just sharing because I think you pointed to something that actually leads to this really well. There, if you actually look, listeners, if you look for yourself, it's part of the human condition to try to arrive somewhere, right? It's like, and it's what Bola was talking about, that we're never really done. And you probably know that intellectually. But if you actually look at your actions and the way that you're trying to operate life, there's a place that you're trying to get to, right? And we're focused on the goals that we're trying to achieve. We're trying to focus on the jobs that we want to have, the relationship that we're calling in, the traveling that we want to do, the money that we want to have in the bank account. And then there's personal things too. Like I want to stop being shy. I want to stop being insecure. I want to stop being so such a procrastinator. So there's a way that we often fall for this like trap that is has us focused on the future and somewhere that you want to arrive to. Now, the thing about that is that you think that when you get there, something's gonna be different. Somehow you would be fixed. Somehow you would be have arrived. Life would be great. I get when I get there. Woo, yes. And so what happens is you stop ignoring what's here. You stop looking at the miracle that your life is. And by the way, if you have electricity and you have equipment and you have service and you can listen to this podcast right now, your life is a miracle. Like there are plenty of people that don't have access to that stuff, you know? So it's like we take these little things for granted. We take the fact that we have clothes in our home because we're just focused on the problems and trying to solve them. So that is the number one obstacle that I see, that we are playing a game of when I get there someday, I will have the life that I want. And again, one of the reasons why I love spirituality is because it demands presence. Spirituality is at its core, it's the practice of being present in this moment now in all of this infinite beauty and imperfection and messiness and the miracle of it, right? That, wow, I'm breathing right now. Wow, like there's lungs going in. My heart is pumping blood all over my body right now. Wow, that is nuts. That's nuts. Like, Bola is in the UK, I am in Florida, and we are connecting and having this crazy conversation right now through technology. Like, that wouldn't have been possible just like 10 years ago. Like, we're both home in our home offices, doing our thing, making our impact. Like, we would have had to be in a studio and like equipment and 20 people making, you know what I mean? Like, there's all these things that we just take for granted that are really miracles, everywhere, right? So, so that I think is a big obstacle. The other thing is I've been doing a lot of work on this recently and understanding this. And at its core, I think the main thing that messes with us is judgment. We are always like, if I when I write my book, it's gonna be called "Stop Messing with Yourself." Like, stop messing with yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Stop. Like, cut it out. Just, you're beautiful. You're perfect. Everything is great. You're just like a human being having human being experiences. That's part of it, right? So there's a way that we are always in judgment of ourselves, our results, our experiences, the people around you. Again, it robs you from being present. It robs you from being grateful, and it robs you from being in full like ownership of the beauty of your life when you're just focused on the thing that's wrong. Um, and judgment goes into these places like shame and regret and resentment, guilt, which are like, you could probably speak to this better than I could, Bola, but they're just really dense frequencies and they suck the power out of your life. I mean, vacuum clean, like suck the power out. When you are in the playing in those densities and nurturing those densities, it just, life just feels heavy. You can't create. Um, you know, so understanding those things, those mechanisms. I had a mentor once say this to me, and I took it for my own, and I say it all the time. The moment you climb one step, you are at the bottom of the next one, right? The moment you climb one step in the ladder, woohoo, you're like, oh, here's the other one. And entrepreneurism teaches you that, because like the first hurdle is like, okay, let me get to 100K. And then you get to 100K and you're like, okay, 250. And then 250, you're like, okay, 500, but you're never like done. It's always like more and more and more and more. And as the goal increases, so does the problems. So does the challenges. Like, what it takes to navigate 100K business is very different than what it takes to navigate 250 a 250K business. It's very different than what it takes to navigate a 500K business to a million K. Like, there are more problems, more things can go wrong, more, um, so all of those things, this myth that we're gonna arrive somewhere and that someday, like, I think that is one of the things that I do the most work on with people, and honoring all of yourself at every moment, every breakdown. It's like, it's medicine. It's here to teach you something, and the more that you are resisting that and making it wrong and pushing it aside, well, now you haven't learned the lesson. And so the lesson has to keep showing up in order to remind you because that's what you're here for, is to learn those lessons. So if you don't learn it, those guys up there have to keep putting it in front of you till you get it.
Mm, I totally agree.
And then you just keep repeating it over and over and over again. Or like, why does this keep happening? It's like, because you haven't learned your lesson yet. You
Mm,
haven't, there's something here for you to learn. That's a really powerful question, by the way, guys. What's this here to teach me?
mm.
What's
Yeah,
this here to
thank you.
teach me? It's if you can develop the practice of stepping into that inquiry when you are up against life, you will now have a superpower.
Mm,
You will now have a superpower because that question disarms the resistance and
mm,
really allows you to get in a place of curiosity and discovery.
mm,
That's another thing that gets in our way. We think that we're these things. We think that we're fixed. We think that we are some way. And then we stop being curious about what's possible. Oh, oh, I'm shy. Oh, I'm not good at speaking. I'm not good at, and then you think you're that way. And then so you stop being curious about, well, what if you could be good, or what can you learn, or how could you get good at that? And so it gets in the way of our development when we walk around like we are this fixed thing and not just like, no, this is just what you're practiced at right now.
mhm.
So,
Thank you. Thank you so
yeah.
much, Gary. I love that. No, really, you touched on so many things there, including trauma and the fact that trauma really impacts on how we work and how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
Trauma impacts on the prices we charge. You're not able to charge certain prices because you don't think that you will be seen or you will become, you will lose friends, or you may feel that this is not something that is worth charging this amount for. So
Yeah.
actually dealing with the trauma allows us to even fly higher. It takes work, but it's really knowing that it is worth it. And I love what you said about us really coming to understand that there are things around us that we can always be grateful for. Always, there's always
Always.
something in any moment. The more grateful we are expanding that light. We are expanding our connection with that higher self. That energy of gratitude is not the energy of the physical ego self. That's the energy of light, is the energy of the higher self. And we can align. It's a very simple way to align, just in an instant, in a moment, in a second, to align to that infinite wisdom, that infinite love within us, and it
Yeah.
expands. And suddenly we find ourselves that same moment being able to see things in a different way. We're connected to that different perspective. So those are little gifts that we already have within us, that we don't have to pick up the phone, we don't have to call anyone, just within us.
Yeah.
As we stand, we can actually connect to that frequency of gratitude. So I love that. I also appreciate what you said about learning to understand the different parts of us, and knowing that there are different versions. There is not one side. Yes, I may be shy on a Monday, but on a Tuesday, hello, I'm somewhere
Hmm.
else. So there is those different parts of us, and each part is playing a role as the it is being led by the higher self. Every single part of us,
Yeah.
even the dark sides. Even the
Yes.
dark sides that are just real, very much, that inner critic is a dark side,
Yeah.
and it's about us, allowing it to to be heard, but to know that that is not the way things are now. I see things
Yeah.
differently. Allowing those parts to feel safe, soothed, and nurtured, and allowing them to surrender, and that is the only time they get out of the way, when they're ready to surrender, when they're ready to see a different perspective.
Yeah.
So I love that. I do love the work that you do. Do you have any final words for us today in terms of the work you do, and how those who may be listening or watching will really come to that place where they are feeling much more embedded in that that higher self, that true self, that spirit being, because our true self is spirit, and allowing that spirit self to lead, and the kinds of phenomenal leadership that is available to us as entrepreneurs when we are leading from that place of authenticity is very
Yeah.
different. How do you, or what are any final words that you would like to share with us around that?
Yeah. Thank you, Bola. This has been amazing. I think the last thing I want to say is I want to respond to, I was so glad that you mentioned the the idea of the shadow and because one of the things that I think is happening in the personal development movement and even in spirituality is that we're getting addicted to trying to feel good, and that we're using these tools to bypass the shadow and the deep, uncomfortable work to get to a place where we're just feeling good. And I think that we have to be careful with that because you know, if you're not fully integrated, if you're not in a if you're if the shadow side of you doesn't have a seat at the table and isn't and its pain and trauma isn't being honored and heard and witnessed, you're always going to be fighting part of yourself. You're always going to be suppressing part of yourself. When you are doing your work, when you're speaking, when you're selling, part of you is not going to be available to you because there's a place that you're not willing to go. And so I really that's where I think leadership is like called in, because the act of you going, okay, this scares the crap out of me. I don't want to do this. But you know what? I'm going to take a step. And you don't have to do it alone. This is why mentors and coaches are so important, you guys, because they can hold your hand through this work. Or it could be a good friend, or it could be, but get the support that you need to feel the safety you need to take that step. But take the step. Take the step. Honor all of that and trust. I know this is tricky. It might be hard to hear because some of the trauma that has happened to people is just like unthinkable. Trust that it has a purpose now. That there's the lesson that is there from that is medicine for you and others. And that, I'm not saying it was okay. I'm not saying to celebrate it, but the you don't have to collapse and identify with our trauma. You can use it as a way to, the little gay kid that got bullied is the one now that's helping others find their voice, right? Um, there's a way that those experiences can be medicine for us and medicine for others. It can be the thing that become our purpose. So, as I leave you today, just honor all of yourself, honor all of it, and learn the practice of being able to be with the stuff that you don't like, the painful stuff, the judgment, the all that stuff, because that is the work that there is to do. If we're only just always feeling good, then it's fake. It's authenticity. It's not human. Like we have a full range of emotions. And they're all worthy of being honored. Very recently, I just started to realize, I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm not like, I literally have a picture of my baby self right here because I realized that I'm like, oh, I haven't been letting my inner God play. I've been so focused on just the getting stuff done. And so I'm bringing the kid who's hurting, that he's not being given the right to be safe. I'm giving him a table in my world, and I'm nurturing, and I write him letters so that I can practice feeling safe, and I tell him that he's safe, and I tell him that he's got him. We have to be able to do that work too, to be fully integrated.
Mm.
And that's radical leadership. That's radical leadership. So, thank you for this conversation. I honor all of you who are listening and all the path that you're on. And, these conversations are deep and they require you to go into places and put on your big girl, your big boy pants to step into the bigger version of yourself. So I just really honor all of your journey. And Bola, thank you so much for creating such a beautiful space and really allowing me to be part of this conversation. It's such an honor. Thank you, sister.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, I totally agree. We've had a really wonderful conversation, and the work is worth it. It is not something that is meant for the faint-hearted, but for those who have come to awaken in this lifetime, it is
Yes.
worth it. Thank you again, Gary, for joining me today. Al, where can people find you actually when they want to
Yeah,
connect
so
with you? I know you have a podcast as well. Tell
yeah,
us
so my
your
podcast, the podcast is called The Ownership Game. And you can find it on theownershipgame.com or, Spotify, Apple, everywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's also on YouTube. You can find me on GaryMontalvo.com and just Gary Montalvo on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, whatever platform you play in. I'm there. I'm pretty easy to find. Just Gary Montalvo. And yeah, come say hi. I would love to hear from you. Share comments. If there's anything you want to say, it would mean the world. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gary. Yes, I do encourage our listeners and those watching to connect with Gary's energy. Really, really passionate and outstanding. Thank you so much, Gary. And I do want to thank our listeners and those who are watching to subscribe to Daily Soul Bytes Show. We always have new episodes every Wednesday. Always have outstanding guests and share, comment, connect with me, and I do look forward to seeing you on the very next episode of the Daily Soul Bytes Show. Bye bye.